This really could have been disastrous. But anyway, I feel like I'm about to start telling the story and taking over, mate. So can we jump into it? And can you sort of set the stage with how everything began?
Yeah, sure thing, Todd. Challenging is the correct way to describe this one.
Yep.
So when I first got the phone call from the owner to come out and list the property, that was late on a Friday afternoon, and they wanted to meet first thing Saturday morning.
Okay. So time was of the essence?
Time was of the essence, and so this was a key indicator right at the beginning. I managed to be able to schedule a meeting before I started my daily opens for the Saturday.
Okay.
Went around and met them. Beautiful vendors. We signed the paperwork, and they insisted they were on market the following week. So from signing the agency, from the first phone call was the Friday. We then had photos done on the Monday, Tuesday. That's how quick this turns around.
And for anyone listening, and that has never sold a property before, that's not normal. That can happen. That's not out of this world. But generally, there's at least a few weeks kind of leading up to it, sometimes even months.
Right. Well, preparation is always a good thing to do when selling a home. However, their personal situation enabled us to have to do a quick sale.
Okay.
So we're happy to work around that.
Mm-hmm.
No problems, Todd. We've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the photos done, property goes to market. Now, we initially were going to do an auction campaign because we wanted to get, obviously, a quick sale within 3 weeks for the vendor.
Yep.
And we wanted to get them the best conditions. However, when we started the process, we weren't getting the interest levels on the property.
And why do you reckon that was?
To be honest, Todd, it was priced really well. It was in an area where I just sold one recently for about 60,000 more than what we're asking for this property. So price wasn't the issue. It was presented, I suppose, with a quick turnaround, Todd. Presentation could have been a little bit better.
Yep.
However, it was just some properties out there we're finding at the moment with the shift in the market that some aren't performing quite as well as others.
And where was this priced for everyone understanding, what section of the market?
So this was, we're talking under 500,000.
Under 500. Okay. Yep.
And for the area that we're selling in,
Mm-hmm.
that was just below median.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
So we weren't asking the world. So we had the first open, and I was very conscious about time. Obviously, I had the vendors reminding me that we needed a quick sale. Although we'd set an auction campaign, and the auction campaign was for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They clearly stated that if I had offers prior to that they would be willing to accept. So they made it very clear that they actually didn't want to get to that auction day.
Right. Okay.
There's reasons behind this, and we'll get to some of those later. Some are obviously private, but we'll get to some of them later.
Okay.
We had the first open, and we only had a couple of groups, as I indicated before. I was thinking, okay, this may not have the interest level we need to have a quick sale. And obviously, as an agent, we always want to maximise the best price for the vendor.
Yep.
And work within our constraints as well. Need to be mindful the vendors do make the decisions, but we want to be able to make sure we maximise that price for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a small number of groups through.
How small?
On this one, I had 4.
4. Okay. And what would you normally have on a good campaign these days?
Average at the moment is about 10 to 12.
10 to 12. Okay. Yeah. So we're talking a third sort of.
Yeah. And this
my
time
maths is right.
Yeah, this time last year we were about 20.
So things have changed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago now, 4 groups was great. It was good numbers.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, so we had 4 groups through. I did have a buyer who was very interested in the property. So that was good. And we only need one buyer. So we then opened again on the Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed to get my interested buyer to put an offer forward. We negotiated that offer, and the vendors chose to accept.
Okay. Everything's sounding pretty good so far.
Yeah, I've met the time parameters. The vendor's happy, purchaser's happy, and we're thinking this is great.
Yep.
But once again, being a major factor, in the last couple of years, we've always left about 3 weeks. However, being time poor, as you would say, we decided to give the broker 2 weeks to turn the finance around. Now, the broker in this case, we discussed this, and they were well aware of the time parameters. And
did they come back with a bit of a hey, this is pushing it, but we'll give it our best, that kind of thing?
No, they were like, yep, no, that's all good, Dave. We'll make this happen.
Okay.
And this is a trusted broker, so happy days. I called my vendor and said, yep, we've qualified the buyer. We can make it happen within that period. Everything's looking rosy. As the 2 weeks move on, we start getting a couple of hiccups. It was just little things of, the bank just needs this needs that. Okay, no worries. But we were keeping a close eye on that process. Now, the broker in this case is fantastic. So communication, and I think you'll see there's a theme through this story, Todd, where communication is everything.
Yep.
So there was constant communication back and forth with the broker. Okay, well, how's it tracking? Where's it at? Well, we're just waiting on this. We're just waiting on that. Call the purchaser. Can you just make sure you get this off? And it was all looking like we're going to get finance.
This is when the Jaws music starts.
This is when it starts getting a little bit interesting. And now this is nothing that we don't normally deal with. You know, finance can be a couple of days past.
Yep.
But at this stage, we get to the due date, finance, and it was like, sorry, Dave, we're not going to have it. Okay, well, when do you think we're going to get it? Oh, in a couple of days. All right, no problem. So we had the conversation with the owner.
Yep.
And, you know, they weren't happy, but they could understand the situation. We get a couple of days in back and forth with the broker. And that actually turned into a week. We've got basically now 7 days till settlement.
Mm-hmm.
During that week, communication was everything. Now I had a very nervous vendor, and partly the reason for her being so nervous was they had a same day settlement.
Okay, and what was going to happen if they didn't settle for them?
Well, it creates a chain reaction, and I suppose when anything's going to go wrong in real estate, it will go wrong. And it's, you know, a normal property may settle, and the new owners decide it might settle on a Thursday or a Friday, and the new owners want to move in over the weekend, and everyone's got plenty of time on it. Just to set the tone on a same day settlement, people are moving out of one house and moving into their new house on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can understand, emotions are always heightened, and it wasn't just everyone relying on my sale to go through. It was owners of my vendors also relying on it as well. So
and so were they living in the property, or was it tenanted?
Everybody was living in the properties. So it was.
So they technically become homeless.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now pressure's on.
Yeah. So, you're laying in bed and you're thinking about not just your vendor, your purchaser, because the purchasers were moving out as well for property that they were tenanting, and their tenancy had expired, so everything worked out. Therefore, I'm laying in bed thinking I could make 3 people, not me personally, but
the situation
could lead to making 3 people homeless. When finance was approved, we were starting to cut it fine. There's a period you need in which to settle, and we were really cutting it fine. I had spoken with the broker, I'd spoken with the conveyancers, and everybody was under the impression that it's going to settle. So I rang the vendor, and the vendor's very, very nervous at this stage, although, bless them, they understood and took my advice, and the reassurance through the process, I think, helped calm them down. I did even go one step further and called the agent on the other end and just gave him the heads up.
Yep.
Now, he was a very experienced agent as well, so he was very sympathetic with the situation, and he knew that we got it done still within the time frame.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so happy days. I didn't have to think about this now.
Okay, but that...
so you think.
Yeah, I feel like there's another twist coming. Well, I know there's another twist coming.
Yeah. So as we're edging, as you can understand, and you've probably picked up from the story, there's been a few red flags through this process. And being in the industry long enough now and selling as many properties as I sell, you get a bit of a gut feel.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pay extra close attention to this one.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a feeling that although we'd ticked all the boxes, everything was lining up, there still could be potential for something to go wrong. So
and so expand on that a little bit. When you talk about just gut feel, is this like a little bit of a Murphy's Law, like you're referring to before? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, or is there more of like a, hey, I've kind of seen this pattern before, and it can lead to X, or what's making you go down that path mentally?
Yeah, I think I've seen this pattern happen before, once again, and a little bit of both. Like,
yep.
I think it was very important to think back through the process and really acknowledge those red flags that had come up.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, when I say red flags, like even just from the first moment we met and the time parameters that were put on this sale, were always going to be hard to match.
Actually, yes. Start opening up before we get to like the crescendo, for lack of a better word. I think I've been listening to ABC Classic FM for too long. But like the before we get to that, can you start opening up a few of these red flags actually? Because I think this is going to be a part of the really good takeaway for anyone listening. So that way, if they're ever going through the sales process and they see one of these, it's like tap the brakes there.
Yeah.
So what's the first one there?
Well, the first one obviously is the time factor. So the fact that my vendor wanted it all done now. As an agent, we're used to working under pressure.
Yep.
So when selling, there's a process, and although we work to time constraints, when you follow that process, it takes a lot of the stress and pressure off everybody.
Mhm.
And as you can understand, Todd, real estate, apparently getting married, having babies and selling homes are the most stressful things that you can do.
I can actually now tell you as someone that's done 2 of them, and you've done all 3 of
I've done
them.
all 3 of them.
Real estate's still more stressful than getting married.
I agree. And even more stressful than having a kid.
Okay. All right.
With that was my first red flag.
So on that then, for a takeaway for people, basically, unless you absolutely need, like there is a proper need to get it on the market, there's some kind of a death, a divorce, or something that just like this cannot be shifted. What I'm really hearing from that is people need to look at it and go, okay, can we actually do this over a few more weeks? Can we actually follow the plan that the agent we've chosen is actually putting in front of us instead of cutting the plan in half and then potentially like really drastically reducing a potential of getting a good result?
Correct. So when obviously sitting down with these vendors for the first time, they kind of went about it backwards. Now, I was lucky I got the call in because I'm one of the number 1 selling agents in that particular suburb.
Yeah, listen to
so,
it.
Self-promotion. We're all number 1 agents. So I was fortunate I got the call out. Now, my poor vendor, they haven't really done this a lot. So they purchased a property first.
So not a lot as in this is their first time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
First sale.
Yep. But also, the second purchase being the subject to sale.
Gotcha.
And that's where that personally, they called me in a little bit too late. They should have had me in prior before putting offers in on properties. So we were ready when the offer got accepted. However, they went about it backwards and their offer was accepted and then realised they needed to sell.
Okay, so it was quickly slam the accelerator down, let's start solving problems, opposed to let's set up for it so it's not a problem.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay, all right,
so
gotcha.
That was the first red flag, and that comes with experience.
Okay. All right. Were there any others before we move on to the rest of the story? Any others that were really jumping out?
I suppose the other one was with the finance, and without going into detail because of privacy,
Understand.
there was a couple of questions that were asked along the way, and there were a couple of red flags that came up with that. So that gave me just reason to be cautious, and obviously with the time delay on that finance. Now, 1 or 2 days is kind of normal.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did do a 2-week finance clause, we did make it within the 3 weeks.
Yep.
But to be able to push out that extra week, really, that was another key indicator that perhaps there was something behind the scenes. However, that turned out all right. The finance was fine. So where settlement day comes around.
Yep.
Now, I've done my calls prior to settlement day, as I always do. I call the purchaser. How's everything going? How's everything tracking? You excited? This is how settlement day will look. I call my vendors. Settlement day's coming. However, there was something in my gut that my conversation with my vendor was a little bit different this time.
As in they said something a bit different? Or?
No, I approached it differently.
Okay.
And I kind of indicated that if settlement doesn't happen tomorrow, not saying it won't, but if settlement doesn't happen tomorrow, let's perhaps look at our options.
Okay.
And normally I would never say that. So, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to pre-frame it in case something did happen. So it's always better to be proactive and have an awkward conversation up front. Yep. But people have time.
Then apologise later for some big surprise that no one wants.
Yeah. And look, unfortunately as an agent, you get roped into the middle of all of this.
Yeah.
None of this is in my control at all.
Yeah.
I can only control certain facets, but these are bigger problems that I can't have any control over.
And so what actually happened?
So we get to settlement day, and normally it's between 11 and 2.
Yep. This is in South Australia as well, for anyone wondering. Yep.
Anyway, it gets about 2 o'clock, and we hadn't heard anything. And I'd made calls to the conveyancers the day before, and everyone's like, yep, it's going to happen.
It's all on track.
Yep. So I called the conveyancer, and I'm like, hey, just touching base to see how our settlement's happening. And all of a sudden...
You even look nervous about to say this. Like,
I just hear a bit of panic from the conveyancer, and she goes, "Oh, Dave, we've got a problem."
That's what you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. At 2 o'clock, and I'm like, "Okay, well, we problem solve all the time. How can we get around this?" She goes, "There's been a mistake with the bank, and instead of transferring the funds for the sale to our account, which then we transfer on, it's been transferred to the purchaser."
Now, clarifying what that means, because for anyone that's just like kind of half listening to this right now and they're on the treadmill at any time, like who should have been given the money?
Okay, so the money for the transfer of the sale,
Property you sold.
for the property I sold, should have gone into the trust account from the bank to the conveyancer. Now, the conveyancers then transfer that money through the conveyancers into my vendors.
Yep. Okay. So it eventually ends up going to your vendor.
Yeah, correct. So in layman's terms, the money went straight to the purchaser.
And not even into a trust account to
Not
the
into
purchaser conveyancer, like to their bank.
Yep. So just imagine this, Todd. It's 2:00 on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. And
you
you're
look
like,
at your bank account and you're $500,000 richer.
okay. So I've never even heard of a mistake like this happening. How did it happen? Like, what was their explanation?
Well, the explanation was that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but we'll go with it. The person who was handling the file from the bank was sick that day.
Okay. Yep.
Someone else in the office had picked it up.
Okay.
There was a mistake made by that person because, without going into too much depth, there was a refinance as well. So a portion of money was actually going to the purchaser.
Yep.
However, the rest was meant to go to the conveyancers to then go to my vendor. All of it got transferred. So that person who picked up the file just saw the one bank account and just transferred the whole sum of money. Now, this is a big mistake.
Now, just for anyone wondering why some money's going to the purchaser, I'm assuming there was some kind of a negotiation on the BNP, something like that? Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's like here's a few $1,000s or whatever. Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
So after I was made aware that we had a major issue, a small issue, the first phone call was straight off from the conveyancer. I did touch base with the broker and just say, hey, like you're aware of this. They were fully aware as well, and they were doing everything. Although there was nothing anyone could really do at this stage, we had to put faith in the purchaser. So
that's a lot of faith.
Straight off the phone, straight to the purchaser. Hey, mate, settlement day today. You excited? Yeah, I hear you're $500,000 richer. He sort of.
Did he think you were joking? Because I wouldn't take that seriously if I got that call.
He did. He and I said, have you spoken with your conveyancer? He goes, I've actually had a missed call, and I said, you need to talk to your conveyancer now. But more importantly, you're about to open your bank account and you're going to be $500,000 richer.
Yep.
I need you. Now, we're just to set the time period as well. I've got 3 families relying on this sale to happen. Lands Titles office close off settlement at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. And we're at about 2:15, 2:30 at this stage.
So you're proper pushing it. Like this is like, do
sweating bullets.
you remember that show 24? Like,
yeah. So I've called the purchaser and I'm like, mate, you have to get to the bank now. And I go, while you're on the phone, can you check your bank, see if the money's there? He opens up, he goes, Dave, the money's not there yet. Oh God, here we go.
So where's the money?
Well, the money was in limbo because it had just been transferred.
Oh, of course, and it's $500,000, so it's
yeah. So it needs to do what it does.
Yep.
It was in the cloud or whatever.
Okay.
So I said, mate, jump in your car, go straight to your bank because once again, I'm not sure on bank hours, but I know they're not open late on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
I said, jump in your car, get to your closest branch. I need you to, as soon as the money hits your account, I need you to transfer it to your conveyancer. And he goes, yep, no problems. And I was like, okay, well, that's one issue ticked because he could turn around and say, hey, Dave, I'm about to go on holiday.
Well, that's what I'm just thinking. Like, because I know you both professionally and personally. So I know you are the kind of person that you're very good at maintaining good relationships on both sides of the fence of transactions. I think that's a real superpower of yours. But I'm just thinking that if someone wasn't, and maybe that happened to an agent where all of a sudden everything's kind of fallen to pieces and it was more of a like screw you type relationship, like could this guy have actually just gone, catch you?
Well, yeah, technically he could have been held responsible, but there was nothing stopping him from potentially just jumping on a plane and flying to Mexico. There was nothing I could physically do to stop that.
Okay, so your heart must be pounding.
My heart is pounding because as much as I'm on the phone saying, hey, mate, get to the bank, he could turn around and drive the opposite direction. Yeah, Dave, I'm going to the bank. I'll see you there.
Oh, God. Okay.
So, once again, I'm entrusting that he's on the way to the bank, doing the right thing. I jump on the phone to the vendor, and this is a phone call every agent dreads.
I bet.
I get on the phone and I'm about to tell her, not just her, who's going to be homeless. We've got everybody else in there that's going to be homeless too. So I hop on the phone and I call my vendor and I say, hey, look, you know how we had that conversation yesterday?
Yeah.
I'm so glad I had that conversation yesterday. Yeah, we had that conversation yesterday. Well, I just want to let you know that there's been a mistake and the money's actually been transferred into the wrong account. She was like, well, where is it? And I'm like,
Understandable.
yeah, it's not in my account. I can tell you that right now. No, I said, yeah, look, there's been a mistake on the bank and it's actually gone into the wrong place. Everybody's trying to rectify this problem. I just want to let you know we're working really hard to make this happen by 4:30 today. But you know how we had that conversation yesterday? What is our plan B? And she said, Dave, can you call the agent of the other property?
Okay, yeah. The property they're buying.
Yes. So it's always better to come from agent to agent.
Yep.
We understand the lingo. So I just rang the agent.
Especially when something's so emotionally charged. Sometimes you can come across in a totally different way than what you're meaning to if you are the one that's affected in the situation.
Correct. So bless my vendor. She could have actually lost it at me, but she didn't. Kind of understands things don't always go a certain way in life.
Yeah.
These people are very, very rare.
So I would have started drinking.
So I ring the agent and I give him the heads up. And so he's not as sympathetic towards the situation, but he once again understood. So he's relayed that to his vendors. I didn't want to make everyone panic, but at the same time, I couldn't stick my head in the sand and think that everything was going to be okay either. So we've got a purchaser on his way to Mexico. Potentially.
So hopefully he's going to the bank to transfer the money back
to the conveyancer.
We've got your vendor who's about to be homeless, a purchaser who's potentially about to be homeless,
and another family
who's in a chain with the other. Right. Okay. So we've got 3 people that don't know where they're sleeping tonight. One person that's just got $500,000 that shouldn't have, and one that's just not got it that should have.
Correct.
Where to from here?
Okay, so it was a lot of phone calls back and forth, and it was just being proactive. Now, we're almost into 3. We have an hour and a half. I get back through to my purchaser, and the next phone call was, I'm at the bank, I'm waiting in line.
Is he wearing a sombrero?
Some glasses. I said to him, okay, great. Well, what I need you to do is just give me a call as soon as it's been transacted. It's getting closer to 4:45 because he obviously must have been on a busy bank that afternoon. And I ring him again. I'm like, well, how's it going? I haven't heard from you. Is the money being transferred? He goes, well, yeah, look, it's in my account. So that's one thing we can clarify.
Okay.
However, I don't have any ID on me and the bank's not going to transfer the money.
Okay. All right.
So the process is the bank manager needs to come out and approve the transfer of money from my purchaser's bank account back to the conveyancer.
But this guy's got no ID.
He's got no ID. He's standing in line. He's just rushed from work under my direction.
Yep.
And he's done the right thing, which is fantastic. The final call was an elated call. It was, we've got it done.
Okay. So that must have made you feel a million times better. But how?
The bank manager basically turned a blind eye to the ID. Yeah. And I don't know. I didn't ask any more questions. All I knew was the money was going to the conveyancer.
Yeah. You're just like, it's done.
It's
done.
I'm
not going to say anything else.
I'm not going to rock the boat. It's done. Okay, so that's done, but we're still yet to get to settlement.
Was it relationships? Like that was like, what was it? There must have been something there because turning a blind eye for like a $50 transfer and a $500,000 transfer are 2 different things. Like it's.
Yeah, look, once again, I think it was the fact of the relationship and the communication. So I've got a really good relationship with brokers that we deal with a lot, and they being on the front foot. When I say I was watching the clock, I was still calling everyone I could try and make something happen. And I don't know if the broker got on the phone to the manager at this point.
Yeah, okay.
So
sort of smooth things over of like, hey, you're hearing it from us as well. Yeah, this is a real thing.
This is actually a real situation, and we don't have a plan B. This has to. So that elation of we've done it. And I was like, great, you've done it. Now I've got to get the settlement done. So by the time all of that happened, the money went to the conveyancer.
Yep.
I get the call from the conveyancer. Yep, the money's landed in the account.
I'm even feeling relieved right now, and this isn't even happening in real time.
The money went into the account, but we had the clock ticking because we had to get it in before 4:30.
Okay.
The property settled for 29. We had a minute.
So everyone got their money. Everyone went home and to an actual bed that night in their respective houses with literally 1 minute to go on the clock.
1 minute to go. If it ticked over, we'd be telling a totally different story now.
That's insane. Okay, look, I want to get into the takeaways from this, David, because one of the big things that I think it is the communication side of things. Ironically, I say the word communication for the start of it. But the communication, I can't help but think, and just in case you guys are listening to this thinking, okay, that's a pretty cool story, but like the chances of that happening to me are pretty much nil. Yeah, that I'd back that up, but the chances of something left of field similar happening and not actually being correctly handled, that's really the big takeaway that I think a lot of people can get from this. And the communication factor is what I hear that you handled brilliantly, and making sure that you can actually go, okay, well, we know where everything is, even if it's in the wrong place. If we understand where it is, we've got a better chance of sorting it out, because it would have been so much easier to just bury your head in the sand and just go, oh, it's 2:00. Yeah, sure, settlement should happen. Everyone told me it was going to happen. Like, time to tee off. But you didn't. And I think that's one of the number one things. Everyone always looks for, I think, certain qualities in an agent. And not to toot your own horn here, David, but I will a little bit. I think that's a quality that I think is very undervalued, is that communication aspect of choosing your agent. But the other thing as well that I thought was a really good lessons here is actually keeping that purchaser on side. Yep. Like we discussed earlier, it's so easy for, especially when you're negotiating and things get a little bit heated, for a purchaser to maybe be a bit like, that guy's a dick. Like, I don't like them. and maybe things do need to get a little bit tense sometimes. Yep. Sometimes that's part and parcel of the job. I understand that. Yep. But if you've got an agent that can still get that goal that you're after price-wise and actually achieve what you're looking to achieve, but do it in a way where everyone's still on side, if things do go wrong, the chances of fixing them are so much higher, because realistically, there was a lot of motivation in this purchaser's eyes, or at least, in my eyes, there was a lot of motivation for them to not fix this quickly. Like, why did they need to? Like, even if it was a late settlement and there was some repercussions, like not to the tune of $500,000. But from your perspective, David, what do you think are the biggest takeaways that someone that hasn't sold property before, a property investor that's now maybe considering selling property, what are the things they can really learn from this?
Yeah, Todd, great question. Like, I think ultimately it's the processes. Now, purchasing property, you're aware of what finances, what you need to provide to the broker.
Yep.
But just really having a good understanding of that. Okay. And making sure that you action things really quickly in that respect. And I suppose that then leads on to, where this may have gone wrong was we always had time pressures put on us, and the brokers had the time pressures put on them, which then put pressure on the purchaser to produce things. Now, that could have been a domino effect into the bank. We don't know. Mm-hmm. We get told that someone's away sick, but they could have made a human error purely based off the fact that everyone was rushing to try and make something happen. As an investor, it's very just understanding the processes from start to finish. Asking questions, ask your broker questions, ask your conveyancer questions. Hey, so what's settlement day going to look like? What does that mean for me? Is there anything I need to do? What are you going to do on settlement day to make sure that this process happens? Okay,
so really ask questions about the process.
Yeah, and get a good understanding. Now, obviously we tend to, and I do it personally when I hire someone, I just my full faith in that it's going to happen. But I think by understanding something is you can then subconsciously help guide that as well. So if you're saying, so what's settlement day going to look like? And is there anything I need to do to make sure that we get this on time? Now, they might turn around and say, no, there's nothing. But at least you're asking that question.
Because just in case if there is something that's actually missed out, that could be the conversation that picks it up.
And I suppose the other takeaway is these purchases you make, and particularly as an investment, have all your ducks in a row to begin with.
Yep.
Now, I know the mistake that happened right at the end, that's totally something that it's a once in a million thing. And you know what? Yep. I'll be doing this for the next 20 years and I probably won't ever encounter it again.
I'd never even heard of it until you told me this story.
No. So it's very rare, the situation that happened, and there's probably nothing you can do to flag it. But I suppose
it's how to fix it, though. That was the thing that caught my attention.
Yeah. And that comes down to, obviously, speaking from experience, but as a real estate agent, just understanding those processes.
Having the runs on the board that you can identify stuff. Yeah.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And whether that's you ask your agent or your representative, what sort of experiences have you had in the past, and just seeing what sort of, how they've problem solved. Communication is key to everything. I suppose one of the most important factors to that whole situation that happened, all the calls that had gone on, the one takeaway for me was that call the day before settlement to my vendor, to saying, hey guys, not saying it's going to happen, but if it does happen, what is your plan B?
Yeah. So you've kind of set up a bit of a safety net for them.
Correct.
Or partially. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that.
What was their answer? Swagging under the stars, or?
Yeah, it wasn't really. They didn't really come up with one in the end. They didn't have a pick, but yeah, they would have been sleeping in the car in the removal truck.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, as an investor, I think understanding those processes, knowing that everything from the broker to the agent to the conveyancer, time parameters, that you need a certain period from when finance to when you can settle, like all of those types of things, just taking that into account.
All right, and so wrapping everything up now, Dave, what's your action step? Something that someone can take out their headphones right now and just go and put into action, because I think the big takeaways from this episode is all really about understanding like agent selection, what to look for, but I just wanted to make this in more of a fun kind of way. And I think this is a story that it's a cool story. There's no other way to say it. Not very cool for the people involved on that day on Friday, including yourself, but otherwise. But like people that don't know anything about it, where do you start? How do you choose an agent? Because you got to remember right now, you're not just talking to South Australia. You're talking to people in Perth, in Sydney, in Townsville, in Cairns, Melbourne, everywhere.
So I suppose the number one action step would be to go along to an open.
Okay.
Go and meet that agent that you've read the reviews about or you've seen sells the most in the area, and actually approach them and see how they treat you as a buyer.
Yeah, I like that.
Do they call you back on Monday morning, ask you questions at the open? Are they jovial? Do they smile? All the little things. And I suppose, with the communication thing, are they calling you back and are they asking you the right question? What do you think about the home? Do you have any further interest in the home? By doing that, you'll get a real understanding of how that agent interacts. Obviously, that transpires through how they do business.
If I ever have a daughter, my dating advice is going to be, don't listen to what boys say, pay attention to what they do. and I think that almost fits into that category of like, it's easy when they're like an agent sitting in the living room to say, oh, I do X, Y, and Z. But that to me falls perfectly into the category of like, show me. But without setting it up of like, oh, you're set to impress, and you can actually sort of see how an agent performs in their natural habitat, for lack of a better term. I like that though, and that's and it's an easy one to action as well, because you just head out to the open. Now, Dave, you've been on the show before, but I think you and I have only ever done weekly slices. So I now need to go to arguably the most important question of the entire show. David Liston, what is your favorite pizza?
I'd have to say Supreme.
Supreme?
Yeah.
Okay. And you getting this anywhere special?
Good question. We make a lot of our own pizzas at home. It's a bit of a family Friday afternoon.
You got a wood oven thing?
No, we don't. We just do it the old traditional way in the oven. It's nothing fancy, but for me, making pizza is quality time with my family on a Friday afternoon. It's a wine with the wife, and it's some fun with my son.
Nice, man. And Christy's a good cook with pizza?
She is. She's fantastic, as you can see.
Well, I remember years ago, I think it was actually episode 50, we had Noel Whittaker on the show. And pretty sure his answer was actually the same, but it was Sunday. Yeah. Every Sunday, the whole family got together and it was pizza night. And I've often said it to Bianca, we need to do the same thing. Yeah. And ironically, like I love pizza, eat it. I haven't actually been eating it recently, but otherwise eat it all the time. But I think there's something special about it because it is kind of that thing that it can be like shared and swapped in a family setting. I like that. I was expecting you to say some kind of like fancy little place down at Brighton or something special, but
Domino's.
Oh, wonderful. Well, look, David, thank you so much for coming on the show, mate.
Thank you, Todd.
Really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Will do.
I feel like I know what you might be thinking. Todd, that story is so crazy. That's never going to happen to me. And you know what? You're probably right. And I really hope you're right, because that's nuts and you don't want that happening to you. And the purpose of this episode, like I said at the beginning, wasn't to give you like an everyday real world scenario and it's like, hey, this is how you avoid it. It was essentially to really get across the importance in choosing an agent that actually understands how to really deal with people. Because I can tell you, like, I enjoy not being an agent anymore for several reasons, but I did enjoy it when I was an agent. The thing that I never liked about it though is everyone just thinks you're all the same and you're a real estate agent, you're scum, you're terrible, you're a horrible person, you sleep upside down, you're a vampire. Like, I think I actually used to say that. But sometimes there's always exceptions. And yes, sometimes it is true. Most of the time it's not. And most of the time, if you really chat with an agent when you're interviewing them, and you start getting a feel for how they treat you as a person. And I love the tip of actually going to an open, interviewing an agent when they don't even know they're being interviewed, because that's when you see them in their natural habitat. Like it actually gives you a good reflection. Like, do they actually call you back? When they do call you back, what are they like? Did they push you? Did they annoy you? Because all of these little personality traits, they do add up to their skill sets. And their skill sets to being able to hold a deal together is the thing that's really underutilized, in my opinion. Well, not underutilized, unrecognized, I think, when people come to choose an agent. And I'm actually just going to add a little bit here. This was actually from Samantha Eason on an episode that we did recently. It was Prue Muirhead, Mel Morgan, Samantha Eason, and it was all about choosing the right property manager, the property manager that profits. Rewind a few back if you haven't actually seen that one. It's a fantastic listen. But one of the questions that Samantha actually had was, explain the worst case scenario that you can think of that just makes you go, oh my God, like I would be mortified if this happened. And ask the person you're interviewing, in that case it was property manager. In this instance, we're talking sales agent. What would you do? Put them on the spot to say, if this happened, how would you handle it? Because being able to actually react calm and cool under pressure in a helpful and explanatory manner is like explanatory. I think that's a word. Yeah, explanatory. Yeah. An explanatory manner can be the difference between deals falling apart and actually being held together. Anyway, let me know if you guys are enjoying these kinds of episodes, because if you are, I'm happy to bring more like real world look behind the curtain type stories, because there is this whole world in the real estate industry that you just don't see unless you either work in it or have worked in it. So yeah, let us know. Send us a DM on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is. And if you're not watching the podcast on YouTube yet, because we're in the new studio now, all of the interviews are actually on our YouTube channel. But if you're watching this right now and you're thinking, mate, wrong crowd, well then hit the subscribe button below and let us know in the comments section what you want to be hearing more of. But guys, that's enough from me today. If you haven't entered the Unstuck Yourself competition yet, click that link as well. Get your details in. You could be sitting right here across from me in the studio. But as for now, my name is Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast. And as always, have yourself an amazing rest of the week. Stay awesome.